Tonight, you're not just falling asleep. You're beginning a journey, a quiet, moonlit walk through ancient paths. As you drift off tonight, tell us quietly, where in the world are you listening from? What part of history would you like to dream through next? Scroll gently down and leave a comment, or whisper your ideas into the stars. We're always listening. If this story helped you rest, tap like, subscribe for more sleepy journeys, and share this with someone who needs a little peace tonight. Your thoughts shape our next path through the past. As the night deepens, let the sounds of forgotten millstones, fading oil lamps, and slow footsteps guide you through a world long gone. Your quiet support helps keep this sleepy journey going. Now, close your eyes, slow your breathing, and come with me to a time when the wheel turned slowly and history whispered you to sleep. This is what if you woke up in Greek times. You wake up before the sun, not by choice, not by alarm. There is no rooster here, just the shift in air temperature, the faint stirrings of movement from the alley beyond your courtyard wall, and the growing brightness beyond the cloth curtain. You blink into the darkness of your stone and mud-walled room, its ceiling blackened with years of hearth smoke. There's no mattress, just a woven mat under your side and the ache of cold on your joints. The winter air sneaks through the wooden shutter slats, and you instinctively curl toward the warmth of your own chest. The single-wool blanket is thin, and you know the fire from the night before has long gone out. You are, quite simply, cold. This is Athens, or what will later be known as classical Athens, though you don't yet have the luxury of hindsight. For now, you're just a citizen of a small house near the city's edge, not poor enough to sleep outdoors, not rich enough to hire someone to light the morning fire. So it's you. Again, you move slowly. There's no rush. Winter days are short, and there's nothing special about this one. You reach for the oil jar beside the hearth. It is heavy with absence, not quite empty, but close enough that you must tip it awkwardly and scrape the edge with a spoon made from olive wood, just enough to dab onto your fingertips before you press them to the dry wick of the lamp. You strike flint, once, twice, then a small spark, smoke, then flame. The lamp flickers. It's dim, but you can now see the uneven dirt floor, your clay bowl, the pot of barley, the old basket with a few onions and nothing else, a sliver of salted fish, curled and shriveled and clinging to a fig leaf. This is breakfast. There is no breakfast time, really. No labels for meals beyond necessity. There is hunger and food. You eat when the work allows it. The children, your niece and nephew, are still asleep on the opposite side of the room, tangled together in a heap of woven cloth. Their mother, your sister, has been gone to winters now. Fevers take quickly in homes without steady heat. You listen to their breathing. One coughs, turns over. You glance toward the ceiling again. The roof held last night's frost, but who knows what this afternoon will bring? Rain, wind, just cold. No matter. It changes nothing. You open the door to the courtyard, just enough to slip through without letting the cold reach the children. There's a clay basin near the doorway, cracked along the rim but still useful. The rainwater inside is frozen at the edges. You break the crust with a finger and rinse your hands. It stings. That's good. It means you're still alive. You walk slowly past the neighboring wall, where an old man is already hunched over a fig tree, mumbling to himself about bark rot. You nod. He does not look up. At the edge of the lane, a donkey brays. The neighbor's youngest child is attempting to load bundles of brush onto its back. There's little wood in the city, only what traders or rural cousins can bring. Your own stock is thin. The hearth will go cold again soon. You look toward the city center. Even from here, you can just make out the crest of the Acropolis, rising in the early gray light, still dark against the pinkish sky. There are temples there, statues, priests, altars, but none of that helps you make barley stretch through another week. You return indoors. The children are awake now. They do not speak, just look toward you with dull eyes and expectant bellies. You smile anyway. You tear the old bread and crush it into the warm barley with your thumb. You press it into their hands. They eat. You don't. You'll eat if there's some left tonight. After you return from the water run. After you barter with your neighbor for a few spoonfuls of goat curd. After you clean the pot and check the wall for leaks and sweep the floor for the third time. The boredom of it is eternal. And that's what survival is here. Not heroism, not drama, not the sweeping speeches of philosophers or the victory of generals. Just long, flat hours, cold fingers, uneven meals, repeated motions, the daily work of keeping other people alive, because you remember how it felt when no one could do it for you. You light the fire with twigs, let it grow. You hear the neighbor child cry as he drops a bundle of sticks. You press your palm to the base of the pot. Later, you will make your way to the communal well. Later, you will stand in line and watch as others measure water with calloused hands. Later, you will return and begin sewing again, patching the same tunic for the 5th time. But for now, you sit by the hearth. You watch the steam rise off the pot. You watch your niece eat and chew slowly. You exhale. You wonder quietly if this winter will be easier than the last. And you wonder, just as quietly, whether you've ever really lived another kind of life at all. Section 2. The walk to water teapot is empty now. The last scraps of barley were scraped and spooned into clay bowls not long after the sun lifted above the roofline. You washed the bowls with cold water and sand, scrubbed them until they were mostly clean, and placed them upside down on the ledge near the hearth. They will dry slowly as the fire smolders. You stretch your back. It aches not sharply, just persistently, like an old splinter buried too deep to dig out. A familiar ache. An old companion. You tie the frayed rope belt around your faded tunic and wrap your cloak over your shoulders. The wall still smells faintly of the smoke from yesterday's fire. The amphorae waits near the door. It's not full. You have to fill it. You do this almost every day. Athens does not carry water to you. You must go to the water yourself. There is a cistern not for only a 15-minute walk, perhaps, but it will take longer. There is always a wait. The neighbors will be there, the fishmonger's wife with her sharp elbows, the grumbling grandfather, who cuts the line if no one stops him. The queue begins before sunrise and stretches until midday. You aim for somewhere in the middle. You press your hands to the amphorae's sides and lift with your legs. It is lighter now than when you carried it back last time. That's both a blessing and a sign of concern. You hope it doesn't crack this time. The base has a hairline fracture. If you set it down too roughly, it may split for good. You shift the weight to your hip and push the door open with your shoulder. The cold bites your face, but the light is stronger now. The lane is narrow and winding. Mud takes the edges where the stone tiles have sunk or broken over the years. You pass shuttered doorways, low walls, sleeping dogs. You walk slowly, not because you are tired, but because the vessel will swing if you rush, and you cannot afford a spill. On your left, two women are already walking back with full jars, balancing them on padded cloth crowns on their heads. You nod to one. She returns the nod. No one talks much during the morning water run. Everyone is focused on balance and breath and mud. You pass the bakery. It's barely more than a window in a wall, but already you can smell the heat of yeast and ashes. The baker's boy is outside, sweeping yesterday's charcoal into a heap near the curb. He does not look up. The loaves will be ready soon, but you cannot afford them today. You walk on. The agora is waking. Stalls are rising from the earth like lazy animals, canvas stretched over crooked wood frames, tables dragged out and set with bundles of garlic, amphorae of oil, cords of onions and baskets of chestnuts. There is no shouting yet. The sellers conserve their voices until the better off citizens begin to arrive. You are too early for the noise. That is good. Still, you pass the spot where yesterday a man was dragged out of a stall by his collar and beaten. He had accused the olive vendor of cheating the scales. The olive vendor took offense. The fight lasted for minutes. No one intervened. You step over the broken reed basket still lying in the dirt to the cistern. The line is already forming. The mason's daughter is first, her tunic to find for a morning chore like this. She eyes you as you take your place behind the man with the goat cart. The smell of dung is thick, but you do not move. To lose your spot is to lose half the morning. You set the jar down carefully, testing the ground for flatness. The crack does not widen. You exhale. There is no shade here, just a column of pale sun bearing down on bare stone and the huddled shoulders of dozens of others who also woke early and ate little. A few of them lean on canes. Some squat in silence. One man dozes, his head resting on the mouth of his amphora. You wait. When it is your turn, you rinse the inside of your jar first twice, then tilt it sideways to check for residue. You do this not because it matters deeply, but because it is how your mother taught you to do it. Let no mold grow in your jar, she once said. Clean water hates a dirty home. You fill it slowly, tilting the ladle into the mouth of the amphora, careful not to spill. Each drop matters. Each spill would be shameful. By the time the jar is full, your shoulders are tight. You press your hand to the side and lift, heavier. Now, you brace your legs and begin the slow walk back. The weight is familiar, but not welcome. On your way back, the agora is louder. A seller waves a sprig of something green in your face, some sort of herb you can't name. 3 leaves for a coin, she says, half smiling, half sneering. You shake your head. She mutters something under her breath as you walk on. A boy chases a loose chicken past your feet. You stop just in time, clutching the jar, your toes nearly crushed under the animal's sprinting claws. The boy laughs. You do not. You pause near the stoa for a moment to catch your breath. The shade there is cool. A group of men are debating something about a grain shipment delayed at Piraeus, something about a magistrate and bribery. You hear the words, but they mean little to you. You cannot eat grain shipments or warm yourself with debate. You shift the jar on your hip again and move on. Back home, the children are outside. They have set up a game with stones, some sort of counting, some sort of order. It doesn't matter what the rules are. The point is to pass time. You smile at them as you pass through the courtyard and into the house. You lower the jar slowly to the floor. No cracks, no spills. You exhale. You light the fire again. Boil a little water. Soak some herbs. There will be no proper lunch. Just warmth in the belly. That is enough. The sun climbs. The house grows warmer, if only slightly. You clean. You sew. You mend a sandal strap. You fix the shutter so it no longer squeaks in the wind. You check the oil again. Still low. You do not complain. In the corner of the room is a bundle wrapped in old cloth. Inside is the winter tunic, thicker, coarser, patched with layers of rough wool. You take it out and lay it on the ledge by the fire. You will wear it soon, but not yet. You are waiting for the wind to change, waiting for that thin, sharp smell that means frost is coming. You sit, just for a while. The children are laughing now. Someone has overturned the game and accused the other of cheating. It's a light sound, like a fire crackling at just the right pitch. You let it fill the room. Outside, a neighbor calls out. A trader from Euboea is in town. He has figs. You don't move. You have no coin. Let others buy their sweetness. You sip warm water from a clay cup and rest your hands on your knees. You wonder briefly how much longer you can stretch the food before the walk to the market becomes unavoidable. You wonder if the cracked amphorae will survive another fill. You wonder what the boy at the bakery would trade for 2 broken sandals and a handful of dried onion skins. You wonder, in a quiet, private place in your chest, whether anyone who walks by your house knows you're alive. Section 3. Waiting for rain. Sky is a different color today. Gray, but not the soft kind. Not the dim veil of morning mist or the pale fog that hangs above the city at dawn. This gray is thicker, heavier somehow. You feel it in the air, behind your eyes, in your knees. You've seen this kind of sky before. It means change. It means weather. It means something is coming. You rise before the children. Again, the fire is only ash this morning, and the cold has crept deeper into the stone floor. Your wall cloak is stiff, and your hands, ache as you pull it around your shoulders. Your fingers catch on a patch of old stitching near the edge of the hood. You remember mending that hole last year when the rains came early. You remember thinking, this cloak might not last another season, and yet here it is. The amphorae from yesterday rests in the corner, the water already half used. The children are growing, and they drink more now. You will have to fetch more soon, but not today. Today, the sky speaks. You step out into the courtyard. Wind, not fierce but firm, pressing at your sides, moving the linen rags you left out. Too dry. The smell is rich wet clay, dust, and the deep iron scent of rain hasn't fallen yet. Your neighbor's door creaks open. The old man from 2 houses down nods as he emerges, dragging a patched net behind him. Perhaps he still thinks the fishing boats will arrive today. He's always hoping for a good trade. You almost smile at the snubbiness of hope. You boil water. You slice the last of the onions. You crush a few old lentils between stones and add them to the pot. The meal is thin. Again, you let the children sleep a little longer. They toss and murmur under the blanket. You adjust the folded cloth near their feet so the cold doesn't creep in through the cracks in the wall. They don't wake. You sit near the hearth and wrap your fingers around the warm cup. There's a tiny crack in the rim, barely visible, but familiar. You drink from the other side now. You always do. By midday, the sky darkens. The agora is quieter than usual. The market stalls are half assembled. One of the fishmongers argues with the city guard about his space near the stower. His voice rises, then fades. You stay indoors. The wind has picked up. Dust swirls in the corners of the courtyard. A piece of straw twists in the air before settling at your feet. You close the shutters, but not tightly. You want to smell the rain when it starts. Outside, someone calls out something about moving the baskets of figs under cover. You reach into the basket by the wall and count the beans again. You count them often. They do not multiply. The first drops come as you are sewing a patch into the children's winter tunic. At first, it sounds like someone knocking softly on the shutters. A polite tap, then another, then dozens, then thousands. The rain comes. It hits the roof tiles, the courtyard, the jars, the streets. It runs in rivulets down the walls. The smell is immediate and overwhelming, sweet and earthy and ancient. You close your eyes and listen. It is not a storm, just rain, steady, relentless, the kind that sinks in. You remember being small, crouched in your mother's lap during a rain like this, her voice telling you stories you've mostly forgotten. You remember the way her fingers moved through your hair, the rhythm of her breath as she spoke. You remember another time, later, when the rain came while you were sick, how the damp made your bones ache, how your sister sat beside you, placing warm cloths on your forehead and pretending not to worry. You remember the long stretch of silence after she was gone. The first rain without her. It sounded the same, but it felt like falling. The children wake late. They are quiet when they come to the hearth. They sit near the fire and watch you finish stitching the sleeve. Is it raining? One of them asks. You nod. Yes. He crawls closer and peers through the shutter slats. His sister follows. Together, they stare out at the courtyard, where small puddles are already forming. They do not ask for food. They do not ask for stories. They just watch the rain. Later, you open the door to check the jars you left beneath the eaves. They're catching water slowly, but enough. By morning, there will be more to use. You test the first jar with your hand. The water is cold, but clean. You look up toward the sky. The clouds are low, still moving. Across the rooftops, you see someone else standing outside, doing the same, just watching. You raise a hand. They nod. That is enough. Back inside, you light the lamp. The oil is nearly gone now. You use only a few drops, just enough to see your stitching. You sew the last hem and fold the tunic neatly, placing it near the blanket for the evening. The children will need it soon. You step to the doorway and lean against the frame. The sky is dark, and the city smells like earth and stone and oil. There are no soldiers here, no philosophers, no oracles, just people, just rain, just the slow, persistent rhythm of living through another day. You wonder, not for the first time, whether the world notices your survival. You wonder if it matters. You close the door. You stir the pot. You sit beside the hearth, and in the silence that follows, broken only by the rain, you feel something close to peace, not comfort, not hope, but peace. Story 2. Under the Sandals of Sparta, Section 1. The AGG begins. You are 7 years old. You do not know the word childhood. You do not recognize the idea of privacy. You do not believe in softness, and you have never asked for more. You are in Sparta. The tunic you wear is thin, coarse. You do not own sandals, and your feet are thick with callus from the months you've spent walking across sun-baked roads and stony fields. Your mother does not weep when she hands you over. Your father says nothing. His eyes meet yours, then shift toward the man who waits outside, dressed in a red cloak, spear in hand. There is no ceremony, no hugs, no parting gift, only a nod, and then you are gone. This is the AGG. The word means leading or guiding, but it is not gentle. You will live with other boys, now older ones, mostly. You will sleep on reeds that you gather yourself from the banks of the Eurotas River. You will eat barley and cheese sometimes. Mostly, you will eat little. Hunger will become your tutor. Cold will shake your back. And you will learn T first. You are confused. You do not understand why no one explains the rules. The older boys bark commands. They strike you for hesitating. They take your food if they catch you chewing too slowly. You try to speak. One night, you ask the boy beside you, "What are we doing tomorrow?" He glares at you and spits in the dirt. Whatever they tell us. The next day, no one speaks to you at all. You begin to understand. Discipline here is not taught with lectures. It is taught with silence and pain and repetition. You march barefoot across stones. You run drills at dawn and lift stones until your arms tremble. If you fall behind, you are mocked. If you complain, you are whipped. If you cry, you are forgotten. At night, you share a single wool blanket with two others. You learn to curl your body small, to breathe quietly, to endure the snores and coughs and midnight shivers. No one comforts you. Comfort is something you must unlearn. You remember your mother's bread, the way it smelled when she pulled it from the hearth. You remember the taste of warm goat's milk in the early dark of spring. You remember, but you do not dwell. There is no place for memory here. The instructor, an EIRN, one of the older boys assigned to command your group, watches everything. He is 16. His voice is already deep. He carries a staff and walks slowly among you while you eat. He never raises his voice. He doesn't need to. One boy tries to steal another's portion of cheese. The EIRN notices. He says nothing at first. Later that night, the boy is roused from sleep and whipped in front of you. No one says a word. Not the boy, not the instructor, not you. The lesson is clear. You are not taught to read, not in the way Athenians read, with scrolls and poetry and long-winded philosophy. You are taught letters, yes, but only enough to read a shield, to sign a name, to obey an order. Writing is not for boys like you. The pen does not hold Sparta's future. The spear does. You train with wooden swords. You spar in sand. You learn to strike without flinching and fall without fear. Your knuckles bleed. Often, you do not stop. The food rations shrink over time. At first, you believe there is a mistake. Then you realize it is a test. You are meant to steal. If you are clever, you will eat. If you are caught, you will be punished not for stealing, but for failing. You try your first theft a week later, a roll of barley cake from the cook's table. You plan carefully, waiting until the older boys distract the steward by tipping over the water basin. You move quietly. You do not run. You return to your place and chew with care, keeping your face still. You are not caught. That night you sleep with a full belly for the first time in weeks. You wake before dawn with guilt in your chest, and then you remember. Guilt is not a Spartan virtue. You are taught to sing. Yes, even here, in a place where pain is constant and praise is rare. You learn the old songs of war, rhythmic chants meant to be sung in battle. You hear them rise from the barracks at night, echoed in low voices across the plains. The melodies are simple. The words are sharp. They tell stories of dead heroes and glorious sacrifice. Sometimes the oldest boys cry while they sing, quietly, but you see it. You are beginning to understand that glory is a kind of wound, and that wounds are meant to be earned. Your hair is cut short, not shaved, not styled, just hacked to the base of your neck with a dull blade. You bleed slightly behind the ear. No one wipes the blood. You wash in the river. You scrub the dirt with handfuls of reeds. The water is freezing. You dive in any way. The EIRN is watching. One boy refuses, says he is cold, says he will wash later. He is sent to sleep outside that night. No blanket, no food. He returned in the morning, his lips blue, his voice hoarse. He does not speak again for 3 days. There are no books here, no games. except for those meant to toughen the skin and test the nerves. No laughter, unless it comes at someone else's expense. But there is learning. You are learning to move quietly, to calculate distance in your head, to sense the mood of a crowd by its posture, to step where the ground is firmer, to tell the difference between fear and weakness. You are learning to make your face a mask. One day, the Elia asks a question. He points to a clay pot and says, "If it breaks, what do you do?" One boy says, "Replace it." Another says, "Patch it." You say, "Ask who broke it." He nods. Then he breaks the pot. No one speaks. There are fewer boys now than when you arrived. Some were sent home. Some became ill. One simply vanished. No one asked what happened to him. You do not ask either. You keep your eyes forward. You lace your fingers behind your back when standing still. You eat quickly. You never yawn. You speak only when spoken to. You are becoming what they want you to be. And still, somewhere behind your ribs, a question lingers. Not when will this end? Not will I survive? But something smaller, more persistent. What happens if I fail to become what they want? Section 2. The lessons beneath the skin. You are older now. Not much, but enough that the lines around your eyes have changed. Enough that your legs no longer cramp after the daily drills. Enough that the EIIN no longer watches you quite so closely. You are not yet a man, not in the eyes of Sparta. But you are no longer new. You can tell by the way the younger boys flinch when you pass. The drills continue. You run the same field each morning before the sky lightens. Stones bite at your soles, but you barely feel them now. Your feet are tougher than leather. Your ribs are lean and tight. Your body has grown in the way all Spartan bodies are trained to grow, toward function, not beauty, toward strength, not softness. There are no mirrors in the barracks. You haven't seen your reflection in years. You know yourself only through what others strike. You are learning more than combat now. Tactics, observation, obedience. The instructor has begun pairing you with another boy, Aristomenes, a quiet one with a sharp mind. Together, you are given simple commands. Guard this area, watch that path, retrieve this item unnoticed. The tasks vary. The consequences do not. If you fail, you are punished. You learn to anticipate the ARN's orders before he speaks them. You learn to read the twitch of his shoulder, the shape of his silence. He sees you learning. He does not praise you. He simply assigns you harder tasks. That is the only reward Sparta offers. Aristomenes becomes your closest companion. You do not speak much. You share the same ration of barley, the same stolen figs, the same blanket on cold nights. You spar together. You bleed together. He covers for you once when you're caught sleeping past your post. You cover for him later when his stolen cheese is discovered missing. One day, a younger boy is whipped for a mistake neither of you made. You say nothing. You are learning that silence is a form of protection. The rituals begin. Not religious ones, though those exist, too, in the form of sacrifices and shared chants, but rituals of training. You rise, eat, drill, clean, report. You stitch torn tunics with stiff fingers. You polish your single knife until it reflects the torchlight. You practice speaking in brevity. Spartans, do not waste words. To speak too long is to invite weakness. You learn to say only what is necessary. Once, a boy gives a long answer to a simple question. The instructor says, "You could have said that in 3 words." He is whipped. The lesson is clear. They teach you to lie, not openly, not with malice, but with strategy. You learn to disguise your injuries, to mask your hunger, to downplay your strength until they can be used effectively. You learn the art of pretending not to notice what matters, until it is too late for others to stop you. You learn the rules, and then you learn when they are meant to be bent. The festivals bring brief relief. Carnea, Hyacinthia, celebrations of the gods with music, dancing, contests. You watch from the edge. Occasionally, you're allowed to participate races, wrestling, matches, the staged battles of boys playing at war. During one such event, a group of elders watches you closely. You win the foot race. You are offered no prize. Only a single nod from a gray-bearded man beneath a laurel tree. That nod follows you for days. You hear rumors of those who failed the AGG. Some were cast out. Some sent to live among the helots. Some simply vanished into obscurity. You do not ask about them. You are learning that memory, too, is a tool best left unused when it no longer serves. One night, Aristomenes whispers, "Do you think this is all there is?" You do not answer immediately. You are watching the firelight shift on the wall. You have not thought that question aloud before. Finally, you say, "For us, yes." He nods. "I wonder what it's like in Athens." You both fall silent. It is a dangerous kind of question. The kind that softens the ribs, loosens the spine. You promise yourself not to answer such things again. The helots pass through your vision more often now. They are everywhere and nowhere. You see them carrying bundles of wood, tilling fields, grinding barley. They do not meet your eyes. They do not speak unless spoken to. You know that one day you may be tasked with observing them. Or worse, it is not spoken aloud, but you understand. Everyone does. Sparta survives because someone else suffers. You are taught to ignore that thought. You are taught to be glad that it is not you. The EIRN begins sending you on night missions, quiet movements across the plains, listening exercises, shadowing elders without being seen. Once, you spend 3 hours crouched in a thicket, observing 2 foreign traders in hushed conversation. You report what you heard. Nothing of value. The instructor says, "Next time, tell me what they didn't say." You nod. You do not ask what that means. Later, you understand. Silence reveals as much as speech. You are shaping into something harder. There is a moment you remember it clearly when you strike a younger boy during sparring. He winces, lowers his hand. You hit him again and he falls, and you feel nothing. No guilt, no triumph, just calculation. The EIRN watches. His arms are crossed. He nods once. Barely perceptible. It is the closest thing to pride you will ever see on his face. You no longer cry. You no longer remember how. Even in sleep, your dreams are quiet and grey. You still remember the warmth of your mother's home, but faintly now, like a fading lamp in the fog. You remember how bread used to smell, but you cannot remember how it tasted. There is a new test coming. You do not know its shape yet, only that the instructors speak of it in clipped tones, and that the older boys look at you differently now, like they are measuring something you cannot see. You wake before the others now. You sleep last. You clean your knife every night. You speak less. You feel more alert in the dark. And in the back of your mind, the question returns: if I pass everything they give me, what will I become? Section 3. The hidden trial. You are 14 now. You no longer count the seasons. You measure time by the growth of scars, by the silence of punishment, by the length of your shadow at midday training. Your body is wiry and taut. Your voice is changing, and your hands no longer look like a boy's. The AGG has not ended, but the tests are different now, less visible, more exacting. The instructors speak less often. They watch more carefully. Every action you take is weighed, though you don't always know how or when the judgment falls. You feel it in the air. The real trial is coming. One morning, the Ion calls you and Aristomenes aside. He gives you no instructions, only a look. You'll know, he says, and then he hands each of you a scrap of dried meat, a dagger, and a length of black cloth. No sandals, no blanket, no water skin, no words of farewell. Just a hand signal toward the edge of the camp, toward the outer lands, toward the Helot farms. This is not an official rite, not one recorded in songs or stone. It is whispered about by older boys. Some call it the cryptae. It is a test of stealth, endurance, and perhaps most importantly, loyalty to Sparta's unspoken code. You leave silently, walking until the sky darkens and your legs ache. Aristomenes says nothing. Neither do you. You understand that this is no ordinary exercise. The first night, you find shelter in the base of an old olive tree. Its roots are gnarled, and the earth around it is dry and crumbling. You lie curled between two thick roots, your cloak wrapped tight. The cloth does little against the wind, but you sleep in fits. You wake to distant sounds: an owl, a rustle, a goat's cry, but no man. You are thankful for that. The Helot settlements lie just beyond the river bend. You and Aristomenes crouch in the tall brush, watching them work. They are digging, some harvesting onions, others shoveling earth around grapevines. There is a rhythm to their labor. Their backs bend with practiced resignation. Their tunics are rough, their hands darker than yours from sun and soil. They speak quietly in Doric, with accents thicker than yours. They look like your father, your uncle, yourself, and yet they are not you. You watch for 2 days. You do not approach. You eat the meat sparingly, drink water from a stream. You signal to Aristomenes with small gestures, the way you were taught. You observe. You wait. On the third night, Aristomenes does not return from his scouting path. You wait 2 hours. 3. Still nothing. At dawn, you follow his trail, careful not to leave one of your own. You find him under a tree, sitting upright, one arm blooded. He nods at you. A farmer's dog caught me, he says. You wrap the wound with his cloak. Neither of you mentions the smell of infection. You begin walking again. You do not return to camp for 5 more days. When you finally do, the IRN is waiting. He does not ask for details. He only says, "Did anyone see you?" You both shake your heads. "Did you learn anything?" You nod, and you see, for the first time, something like approval on his face, but it fades quickly. After that, you are treated differently, not better, not worse, just differently. You are given more responsibility, allowed to supervise younger boys during drills, to organize supply baskets, to train with iron instead of wood. N01 says you passed, but you know you have, and you also know there is no ending to this path, only sharpening. You begin to think differently now. You no longer wonder what lies beyond the Tacitus Mountains. You no longer ask why some boys vanish. You no longer dwell on fairness or softness or dreams. You sleep lightly. You eat quickly. You speak rarely. You notice things others don't, how the instructor favors his left side, how the bread supply seems to dwindle more quickly before inspection days, how the helot boy at the stream avoids eye contact even when he knows you're unarmed. You carry these details the way others carry shields, silently, closely. Sometimes at night you dream of running, not in battle, not in formation, just running barefoot across sunlit plains towards something you can't see. And when you wake, there's a tightness in your chest. You stretch, you rise, you fold your cloak, you begin your day. One evening, the elders gather all boys of your rank in the training yard. The sky is pale. A thin wind sweeps dust into your eyes, but you do not flinch. A single instructor steps forward. He points to each of you in turn. No names are spoken. You've been trained, he says. Now you must serve, and that is all. You do not cheer. Spartans do not cheer. You stand taller. You know what comes next. You are now entering the ranks of the Mellarines, the almost men. Not full citizens, not yet, but not children either. You will serve, carry, obey. You will fight when called. You will guard when ordered. You will speak little and bleed quietly. You will wait for the day when your name is called to become a full homewears and equal. And until then, you will endure. You look at Aristomenes. His arm has healed, though it left a jagged line. You do not speak, but he nods once, sharply. That is enough. As the sun lowers behind the mountains, you stand with the others, unmoving. As the wind picks up, you feel the weight of silence on your chest, not heavy, not cruel, just present, just real. And you think again of the question that once lived behind your ribs. What happens if I fail to become what they want? But you no longer ask it, because the answer is clear now. You already have. Story 3. The olive tree doesn't bloom for a very only. Section 1. The orchard of the Porio awakened to the low creak of wood against stone. A gentle knocking rhythm repeated. Unhurried.it is your father, working out the olive press, not the great stone one in the village square, where the landowners parade their harvest once a year, but the old press at the back of your uncle's house, half covered with vines and kept alive only by stubborn hands and habit. You are 11 years old. You live in the dry hills outside Thesby, where the soil is rocky and bitter, and the olives, when they come, are small and fierce with taste. You've never seen the sea. You've never left the slope of this valley. You only know the paths that wind through dust, sheep dung, and broken terracotta. This is your world, a single, gnarled tree at the center of everything. You rise from your mat and wipe your eyes. The press still groans. In the next room, your mother kneads the flatbread dough. She doesn't speak. She hasn't since last week. Not since the news came that your cousin's husband was taken for debt. It happens. A donkey. A winter that killed the vines. A loan from the wrong man. That's all it takes. You go outside and walk barefoot down the narrow terrace path. Each step is careful. The stones are hot already, though the sun is only just lifting behind Mount Helicon. You pass the old olive tree at the bend. You touch its bark. Your father told you once that it was planted by your grandfather's grandfather, who returned from war with one arm and brought a single sapling wrapped in his cloak. He could not build, he could not lift, but he could plant. The tree bore fruit 15 years later. That was the story. You wonder now if it's true. The tree is crooked, not majestic, not wide-branched like the ones in the wealthier orchards. Its roots crack the terrace stone and drink deep into the earth. But its olives come every 3rd year, sometimes fewer. You meet your father at the press. He nods at you but doesn't stop working. The lever is long, attached to a stone weight that slowly turns down on the matting beneath. You smell the crushed pulp, a pungent, green bitter scent that clings to your hands for hours. You are not yet strong enough to pull the lever on your own, but you watch. Your father believes watching is part of learning. This is your life, not war, not trade, not ships or temples or scrolls, just olives, and waiting, and worry. You hear the older boys talk of joining the navy or selling themselves to a merchant's crew, becoming rowers, scribes, guards, anything. But none of them have left yet. The ones who do, you don't hear from again. By midday, the sun is high and the work slows. You eat bread with a smear of old cheese and a single wrinkled fig. There is no meat today. Your father says nothing, but his eyes flick toward the empty sack near the press. Last year, by this time, it would have been half full already. The trees are slow this year. Too much wind in spring. The gods, or the hills, or nothing. Who knows? You drink water from a clay cup and lie back in the patch of shade beside the shed. Flies buzz in the still air. In the afternoon, you help gather fallen olives, not from your own trees, but from the edge of your neighbor's orchard. You're careful. Only what's clearly dropped. Anything more would be stealing, and your family may be poor, but they are not thieves. Still, your stomach tightens when you see the watch boy on the next terrace. He squints at you, arms crossed, but doesn't shout. You pretend not to see him. You finish quickly and return with only half a sack. Your mother doesn't scold. She only runs a hand over your dust-covered head and goes back to her grinding. In the evening, the village bell sounds. Once, just once, you look to your father. He frowns. The bell is for meetings. Usually 3 sounds: summon, speak, dismiss. 1 sound means news. Not always bad, but rarely good. You follow him down the narrow path into the village. The square is quiet, but people gather near the magistrate's house. An old man Yuana is reading a message from the city. The taxes will rise again, 2% more, due before the next full moon. A list of names is read aloud. Those already behind. Your uncle's name is on it. So, is your father single? Quotes as no one speaks. Afterward, a woman throws a clod of dirt at the ground and mutters something about the gods. No one corrects her. Even the priest keeps his eyes low. That night, your father does not eat. He sits by the oil lamp, fingers pressed against his temples. You lie on your mat, pretending to sleep, but watching his face through slitted eyes. You think, what would happen if the tree died? Would you go hungry? Would you be taken, like your cousin's husband? Would you be sold to the temple, or the army, or a tradesman from Corinth? You wake before dawn the next day and go to the tree alone. You sit with it, not praying, not begging, just sitting. The bark is cool in the shadow. The leaves barely move in the still morning air. You press your hand to the trunk. You say nothing, but inside your chest, a thought stirs. If this tree doesn't bloom next year, we might not be here the year after. Still, you pick up the fallen branch and start clearing stones from the base. You'll bring water later from the far spring, if you have to. You'll carry it in your hands if the jug breaks again. Your father doesn't know you're here. He won't ask, but he'll notice. He always does. The tree remains silent, but you think just maybe you hear the earth shift beneath it. Section 2. A jar measured by drops. The jar is lower than you thought. It sits in the far corner of the storeroom on a low wooden shelf where the light barely touches. The surface of the oil glimmers faintly, a thumb's width from the bottom. This is not the large amphorae the families in the village keep. It's a small clay jar, no taller than your forearm, and cracked on one side, a thin brown scar filled with pitch. You remember when it was fuller. At the end of last year's harvest, your uncle measured it out in ladles, 1 for the temple, 1 for the tax, 1 for the landlord, and just one for your family to keep. That jar was the one your father placed here, far from light and air. It's only August, and already it's nearly gone. You aren't meant to be in the storeroom, but your mother sent you for garlic, and the jar sits just beside the old sack where the bulbs are kept. You didn't mean to look at it. You didn't touch it. But still, your eyes linger. 3 meals a day, 6 people, and every drop measured. The last ladle might come in winter. You carry the garlic back in silence. Your mother nods. She doesn't ask. If the jar is low, she knows. She always knows. That evening your uncle arrives. He doesn't knock. He comes in with a grim look and rests heavily on the old stool. His hands are wrapped in cloth. Your father unwraps them and winces. Both palms are burned deep red with patches of blackened skin. Press cracked, your uncle says. The lever broke loose. Your mother sets down her grinding and fetches oil, though you both hesitate how much can be spared. She takes only a thimble's worth and dabs it gently on his hands. It shines on the blisters. Your uncle hisses, but does not pull away. Later, after your uncle sleeps, your parents speak in low tones. The press is useless until it's repaired. No more crushing, no more pulp. The olives will rot unless taken elsewhere, but the other press in the village is owned by Philomenes, a rich man, and his price for use is steep. Your father does not curse. He only sits, motionless, you realize, for the first time, that adults do not grow silent because they don't know what to say. They grow silent because they know exactly what's coming and don't want to say it aloud. The next day, you carry a basket of greenish olives to Philomenes. Press, your father walks beside you. Silent the entire way. It is the first time you've stepped into the village square since the tax notice. The press is crowded, slaves, donkeys, bags and baskets piled in waiting. You are no one here. Philomenes isn't even present. His steward takes the olives without ceremony and weighs the basket. His eyebrows lift slightly. Small yield, he says. Your father says nothing. The steward marks something on a tablet. Then he takes 2 handfuls of the olives and tosses them aside. Unripe, he says. You don't speak, but you feel your fist tighten. They were good. Not perfect, but good. Still, you say nothing. The oil will be pressed and kept in Philomenes' jars. Your family will receive a portion. How much? That depends on the weight, on how clean the olives are, on the season, on the mood of the steward, on whether the gods are watching, and if they're in the mood to interfere. You walk back with an empty basket. Your mother says nothing when you return. She sees your father's face, sees the basket, and just nods. She returns to her work. But later that night, you hear her whispering, not to your father, to the tree. She is at the bend in the path, kneeling beside the roots, murmuring something. You do not hear it all, only fragments. Words like next year, children, and not. Again, the tree doesn't answer. A week passes. Then another. The olive pulp arrives less than expected. The steward claims it was damaged in pressing. Some lost to poor separation. Some given to the temple. You press it in silence, slowly, the way your father taught you. The oil that comes out is thin and bitter. Too early in the season. Still, it goes into the jar. 2 ladles worth. Your mother sets it beside the garlic again. That night, your uncle speaks of leaving. He says he heard of a vineyard north of Delphi needing hands. A good harvest expected. Room for 1 or 2 laborers. He might go. Your father stares at the fire. Your mother does not look up. You say nothing, but something in your chest folds in on itself. If he leaves, he might not come back. But if he stays, the oil might not last. You wake again at dawn and go to the tree. You take the smallest jug and fill it from the far spring 3 walks away, through stony ground. The water is cold. Your arms ache from the weight, but you pour it carefully around the roots, one trickle at a time. Then you sit, as before. You do not speak, but inside, your question grows louder. What happens to those who give everything and the tree still doesn't bloom? Story 3. The olive tree doesn't bloom for a very own. Section 3. The oil in the cracked jar. Last ladle came early this year, not in late winter, as it usually does, but in the second month after the equinox, before the winds had turned cold, before the olives had even begun to ripen properly. The jar was never full, but now it is almost dry. You tilt it, careful as your mother showed you, until the oil pools near the broken pitch seam. It glistens there, golden green in the torchlight, catching the flame's quiet flicker. Your hand hesitates, but the pot of porridge needs something, anything. Before your siblings wake, just one spoonful. No one complains. The porridge is thin but warm. The bread is yesterday's. The onion is sharp. Your uncle eats in silence, then clears his throat. I'm leaving tomorrow. No one looks up, not at first. Your mother dips a crust into her cup. Your father sighs through his nose. Just once. Only you speak. Will you come back? He does not answer. He leaves before dawn. You hear the mule's hooves, hear the strap of his pack creak. Hear your father say nothing. The path bends around the olive tree before disappearing. He pauses there, just for a breath. Then he is gone. The weeks that follow are slow, and slow becomes still. There is no oil to trade, no olives to pick, no wheat to exchange, no extra firewood to carry into town. There is only the same soup, the same field, the same jars, being turned upside down to catch the last of their usefulness. But your mother never forgets the tree. Every third evening she goes, sometimes with water, sometimes with ashes, sometimes with nothing but her voice. She whispers, not for the tree, but for herself. You sit beside her now, though she never asks. Once, she places your hand on the bark, her hand atop yours. You always speak to gods when they've already turned away, she says. But sometimes they hear the last word just before they go. Then one morning, it happens. It is not dramatic. Not like the songs say. You are simply standing by the path, looking at nothing, when you notice a shimmer, a kind of silver in the wind. The trees' leaves are moving. All trees move, even dry ones, even dead ones, but this is different. There are new leaves, smaller, thinner, like the ones from 3 springs ago, and at the base of one branch, high up, there is a cluster, 4 tiny bulbs, olive buds. You run to tell your mother. She does not run to see it. She does not gasp or cry out. She only says, then we wait. The buds grow slow. Some fall, some wither. to survive. By the time the rains come, one has turned black, but one ripens properly. Your father harvests it with his own hand. Even though it is only one, you watch him set it on the low table inside, on a folded cloth. He says nothing. Your mother lights a single lamp. The oil inside is not from this season. It is old scavenge from a cracked jar belonging to a cousin. Still it burns, and next to that flame sits the olive. It is not a feast, not a gift from the gods, not even a promise. It is simply proof that the tree lives. You do not eat it. Your mother takes it and presses it between two flat stones carefully. As your uncle once taught, one drop comes out. One. She mixes it with ground herbs and spreads it over your father's cracked hands. Then with what's left barely a smear, she anoints the bark of the tree. You sit in the cold soil beside her. As the wind rustles the branches above, that night your family eats soup again. The porridge is plain, the bread is stale, but your father speaks. We'll try again next season. And your mother nods. The jar on the shelf is empty, but it's still there, still sealed, still upright, still waiting. And you begin to wonder, is survival not measured in how full the jar is, but in the fact that it hasn't yet been broken? Story 4. The Sandal Maker's Silent Testimony. You wake not as a farmer this time, but as someone hunched over a bench, your fingers sore, your eyes squinting against lamplight. You are sandal maker in a quiet street near the agora, carving soles from stiff hide, threading coarse flax through narrow eyelets. This story explores the unnoticed labor of artisans in ancient Greek towns, those who didn't shape cities through politics or philosophy, but by shaping the shoes that walked their streets. Section 1. The soul beneath the stone. You open your eyes to the smell of boiling glue. It clings to the air like damp wool, settling into your nostrils, sticky and acrid. You're sitting squatting on a low stool, your thighs aching from the angle. Your hands are already working. A strip of rawhide lies across your knees, half trimmed. Your knife, heavy-handled and dulling at the edge, is pinched between your fingers as if you never stopped carving from the night before. You didn't. The last customer came after sundown, a wealthy man. Thin ankles, thick impatience. Make them soft, he barked. I don't walk, I glide. You made no reply. Just measured his feet and nodded. You don't speak much. Not here. Not anymore. There's too much noise already from the street, from the stalls outside, from the endless clatter of Athens murmuring its name over itself. You work in a space no wider than a wag. The wall to your left leaks dust between the stones. The wall to your right is shelves half empty now, since you've sold more scraps than sandals this season. Behind you, the door, usually open, before you, a workbench that has seen more soles than shoes, and under your fingers, always leather, goat, hide, usually, sometimes ox if you're lucky, once deer. From the north, that pair had felt like clouds underfoot. The customer didn't notice. He left them in the bathhouse. There's an art of shaping Salt.it isn't only about the fit, it's about the bend. Too stiff, and the shoe fights the wearer. Too soft, and it collapses like bad philosophy. You don't say these things aloud, but you think them. As you cut the curve near the arch, as you thread the straps through their small punch holes, each pair takes hours. Days if you're aiming for dignity, but the buyers don't care about dignity. They care about speed, softness, price, and they always ask the same thing. Can you copy the style from Thebes? Or make it like the ones Alcibiades wore? Or, worse, is this Corinthian leather? You once dreamed of making shoes for citizens, men who argued in the assembly, men who stood tall in polished pairs as they debated grain taxes and wars against Sparta. But you don't get those men. You get their slaves. You get their servants, sent with a broken sandal in one hand and a coin clenched in the other. Fix this. Make it match. By tomorrow. Still, you don't mind the silence. You'd rather make something that lasts than say something that won't. And sometimes, rarely a customer will return. Weeks later, wearing your work, a heel scuffed, a strap darkened with sweat, but intact, still walking, still carrying them forward. You remember once, a woman came back. She hadn't meant to. She was passing through, then noticed your stall, recognized your work. These, she said, pointing down. You didn't look. You made these, she repeated. Still, you didn't answer. She stood there too long. Then finally said, they haven't come apart. Not once. She left before you could nod, but you nodded anyway. Outside, the sun is rising. The city begins to murmur. The fishmongers shout first. Then the olive sellers. Then the children, chasing one another past your threshold. A boy nearly knocks your water jug over. You don't look up. You're threading a new pair now. The customer is supposed to return by noon. He won't. They rarely do. But you keep sewing. You always do. Because someone, somewhere will walk in these shoes. And that's enough. For now. But tonight, something different happens. A knock, not hurried, not angry, on your threshold. You look up, and standing there is someone you haven't seen in a year. Someone you never expected to return. Someone who once said, I won't need these long. I'm heading to war. He lifts one foot. The sandal is worn nearly through, but still just barely holding. He smiles, you blink, and say nothing. Section 2. The nails in the Arcte boy is taller now. He stands with a strange mix of pride and guilt in his shoulders, the way men do when they survive something they shouldn't. You don't speak. You haven't spoken all morning, not because you're rude, because the silence has its own rhythm now, because your voice left you during a winter 3 years ago, when the chill crept into your throat and never quite left. You nod to the stool near the wall. He sits. His left sandal is frayed. At the edge, the toe nearly curling backward like a leaf in drought. You gesture for his foot. He hesitates, then lifts it. The heel is cracked. The arch is nearly flat. The sole has split along the middle seam. You remember this pair, not because they were special, because they were rushed, because he came to you just before leaving his cloak. Too new, his eyes too young, I'll pay after the campaign, he'd said. You hadn't answered, just nodded. Now he's back. 10 coins. No cloak, no sword, just sandals barely, and a silence like yours. You don't charge him. You never would have. Instead, you work. You scrape the old souls clean, lifting the dust of long miles and dried blood. You realign the arch with a hot iron, just barely, reshaping the warped leather. You replace 3 out of the 5 nails and leave the last 2. They're still strong, and you remember how those nails were hammered in while others slept. How every pair you make is a kind of quiet gamble. Will it hold? Will it last? Will it matter? The boy know. The man watches. You made these better than the city made me, he finally says. Your knife doesn't pause, but something in you does. Around you, the city flows like a low tide. It's not the Athens in the stories. There are no parades of warriors, no flowing robes of philosophers gliding past marble steps. Just the usual sounds. A man selling ink cakes down the lane. Someone shouting about goat cheese fresh, warm, only a few obols. A toddler bawling in a doorway. The kind of city where you can disappear without ever leaving. The sandal man's life is not heroic, but it is meticulous. You wake at dawn, soften the glue with water left overnight, cut hide in 2 squares, trim each edge, score the arch, punch holes with a blunt tool, then thread, knot, pull, repeat. Some days you fix 5 pairs, some days none, but each night you sleep knowing that someone, somewhere, won't feel the stone beneath their heel because of your work. That's the trade. Once, years ago, a philosopher wandered in, young, flushed from talking too long. He needed a new strap for his left foot. As you measured him, he asked, "Do you think craftsmen live better than thinkers?" You didn't reply. You couldn't tell if he was joking. But after he left, you made a note in the leather scrap nailed to your bench. He doesn't walk as much as he talks. The man's new sandals are finished before dusk. You used thicker hide this time, not because he asked for it, but because you know he'll leave again. Maybe not for war, maybe not even far, but men like him don't return to benches like yours. They outgrow you, or the city swallows them whole. You place the new pair before him. He stares, not at the shoes. To you, he finally speaks. The old ones carried me through fire, and the Piraeus, and the fire near Salamis. You nod and point out the door. He doesn't take it as insult, just honesty. He stands, leaves the old pair by your wall, and walks out. No words, no coins, but you don't mind. You won't wear them, but you'll keep them. Just one more pair on the shelf, one more whisper in the silence. That night you dream of a road, a long one, and sandals, dozens of them walking ahead of you, not yours, but familiar. Worn soles, mismatched stitching, awkward bends, each one made by your hand, and none of them turning back. Morning comes again. The glue is cool. The water pot is near empty. A new scrap of hide waits for your knife, and outside, the sound of a child crying for shoes too tight. But you still haven't spoken. Not yet. maybe not ever. Section 3. The shelf by the Dorothy do not know your name. They call you Hoskaitatum as the cutter of hide. Some still remember you as that mute fellow near the hill, or the one with the bent oar, or the sandal man with the dog that died in the plague. You never corrected them. It didn't matter. You speak in shoes. Each morning begins the same, not with song nor prayer, but with your hands. They remember what your throat has long forgotten. The flecks of height, the weight of the heel, the curve of an arch, too young or too tired. You know a man's whole life from his footprint. Where he leans, where he limps, where he drags his regrets behind him. The shelf by your door has grown crowded. Pairs that never left or came back. Some were mistakes, wrong size, wrong shape, too stiff for winter feet. Some were never collected, left as payment, maybe, or abandoned by boys sent off to war, their feet bound instead in bronze or buried in sand. And some you simply couldn't sell. Too fine, too fragile, too personal. You once made a pair for a bride who never married, wove white thread into the heel. She died before the fitting. The sandals sit untouched. Dust has softened the leather. A spider has nested in the arch. Still, you don't move them. You have seen the city change, not with drama, not like plays in the theatre of Dionysus, where gods thunder and heroes fall, but slowly, the way a sandal frays, stitch by stitch. You remember when the streets were quieter, when more men worked with their hands, when olives sold for fewer obols, and boys knew how to mend their own souls. Now there are more voices, more shouting and fewer repairs. They want new, they want cheap, they want what doesn't last, and then they want it again. A woman comes in mid-morning. Her hair is veiled, her robe's plain. She says nothing, just holds out a child's sandal, split clean across the toe. You nod. She places it on the bench. You reach for your glue pot, but stop. The child, perhaps 5, maybe 6 steps in from behind her, barefoot, left foot curled under, trying to look strong, right foot blistered along the edge. You don't ask what happened. You've seen this before. Not poverty, not carelessness, just life. Stone roads, sharp pottery shards, days too long for feet to soft. You pull out a small strip of hide already cut, almost ready. You dip the glue brush, smear the seam, wrap the strap, press, hold, wait, then tie it gently to test the fit. You point at the shelf. The boy's eyes widen. He points to a pair nearly his size, soft brown, with rounded heels. You nod once. He smiles. The woman opens her mouth to protest, then closes it. Instead, she takes a coin from her sleeve. You shake your head. She leaves it anyway, near the hearth, and guides the boy out. The shop returns to silence. You sit, hands idle, and stare at the shelf. Some pairs you remember making, others, you swear, appeared on their own. Tiny ones fit for toddlers now long grown. Massive ones left by men who labored at the port, lifting amphorae with cracked backs and broad strides, and a few that don't make sense at all, straps too tight, heels too long, made in some lost moment of fatigue or distraction. You consider burning them, but you never do. They are your ledger, your library, your life in leather. There's a boy across the street now. He watches you sometimes, not the one from the war or the child with the blisters. A different one. Quiet, awkward, always barefoot. He lingers. Once, you left a sandal on the step. Small, but close to his size. He didn't take it, but he touched it, fingers brushing the edge like it might vanish. You never saw him up close again, but the next week, a pair of footprints appeared in the clay outside your door, carefully placed .deliberate.as. Though someone wanted to leave a thank you, but not a name. You've begun to slow. Your hands stiffen in the cold now. Your knife slips more than it used to. Your eyes need more light to see the grain of good leather. And still, you work, not because the city demands it, not for coin or praise, but because sandals are the only way you know to mark time. Every cut, every hole, every thread passed through a stiff sole is a kind of counting, a way of measuring the days, a way of remembering who walked, who left, and who never returned. The philosopher came back once, older, grayer. He brought a scroll, one he had written. He said he used to think ideas changed the world, but now he wasn't so sure. I think maybe it's shoes. He laughed, then added, more quietly, or the people who make them. He left a scroll on your shelf. You never opened it, but you keep it there, behind the sandals of the bride, next to the soldier's broken pair, between the child's soft heels and a dusty set that no one ever claimed. You don't need words. You don't need stories. You just need souls and silence, and a bench by the window where the sun still touches your tools in the morning, because someday, perhaps not soon, but someday you will stop, and someone will enter the shop and find the shelf, and wonder who you were, and whether the sandals on that dusty wood ever walked the length of Greece, or merely circled the block 1,000 quiet times, and maybe, just maybe, they'll understand that sometimes the most lasting thing you leave behind is what kept others from going barefoot. Story 5. The Garden Behind the Shriner. Section 1. Clay vessels and cracked soil. You do not live in the polis. You wake where the air still smells like time and sun-warmed rock, where the hills wrap around the sky like arms, and every stone underfoot remembers a prayer once whispered. This is Attica, but not the part people write about, not the city of columns or markets or debate. Your world is smaller. Quieter. It sits behind the shrine of a minor god, a rustic protector, barely remembered by most Athenians. Not Apollo, nor Athena, just a spirit of field edges and fruit trees, the sort whose name is scratched into lead tablets by lonely widows, or left unspoken when you pass a boundary stone. And it is your task to tend the garden behind his shrine. You are not a priest. Priests are for temples, for rites, for marble gods, and oil-burning altars. You are a caretaker, a steward of green things, a planter of figs, a trimmer of hedges. They give you a key not to the sanctuary itself, but to the shed beside it. It holds your tools, a hoe with a cracked handle, an amphora for carrying water, a woven basket for dead leaves and broken twigs. You unlock it each morning with the same tired fingers, not because you are devout, but because things must be done, whether the god watches or not. The garden is not large, a rectangle of cracked soil, 4 olive trees in its corners, 2 fig trees along the back wall, a patch of leeks, a scatter of wild herbs that reseed themselves every spring. In summer, the earth splits in long dry seams. You fill them with compost from the goats nearby. In winter, the rain makes puddles where the fig roots drink deeply. No one visits this shrine often, but the garden feeds more than it appears. A widow down the path uses your time for her cough. A boy with a lame foot eats the olives you salt in clay pots. The temple goat lean and grey chews the fig leaves you trim and leaves behind a fine, rich dung that keeps the herbs from yellowing. It is all quiet barter, all half-spoken gifts. You write nothing down. You remember the caretaker before you. He taught you where the soil dries fastest and how to line the path with flat stones so you don't sink in after a storm. He said the god's name only once under his breath while pruning, and then never again. He died in winter, and no one came to replace him for 3 months. When you arrived, the garden was a tangle of rot and dryness. The shrine was damp with mildew. You spent a week just cleaning, a month before anything green returned, and nearly a year before the fig tree bore fruit again. You live in a low hut beside the olive press. A single room, 1 bench, 1 cot. Your fire smokes more than it warms. Your roof leaks only a little, just enough to keep you humble. Your dinner is simple, usually bread soaked in water or oil, sometimes lentils, rarely fish. You grow what you can and trade what you cannot. Your neighbors call you the shrine man, or that fig grower near the rocks. They do not know your name, but they leave offerings, sometimes a crust of bread, a sprig of sage, a few dry dates tied in a reed, not to the god. To some days you speak to no one, only the wind and the trees. You've learned the garden's language. You know when the leeks have had enough water by the way their tops bend, not droop, but bend like tired soldiers. You know when a fig is about to rot from the scent it gives off, sickly, sweet, like too much wine. And you know when a snake has slept under the thyme by the flattened stems and missing mice. There is rhythm here, a cadence of silence and growth, of decay and renewal. In spring, the priest from the city visits, just once. He wears a clean white robe and sandaled feet that have never stepped in mud. He comes to perform the ritual of Karizu, the watering of the sacred boundary. He pours wine and water at each corner, murmurs a blessing, leaves without speaking to you. But this year, he brings a boy, thin, bare-legged, watching everything with the wide-eyed caution of the newly orphaned. The priest does not introduce him, does not explain, just leaves him behind. You find him sitting by the fig tree, picking out the bark. You offer bread. He eats silently. You do not ask questions. Neither does he. Why the second week, he waters the leeks, without being told. You give him the spare cot. You show him how to check the olive leaves for disease. You let him press the goat dung into compost with his bare feet. He grins the first time a beetle crawls across his hand. By midsummer, he knows the garden's voice nearly as well as you do. He finds a piece of tile and scratches a name into it. Not his name, just the first letter. He buries it near the fig tree. You do not disturb it. The shrine remains as it always has, a low stone altar, a wall of offerings, old votive tokens, scraps of broken pottery, a rusted knife once used to cut a goat's throat. You clean it once a week, brush away the ash, sweep the stones, replace wilted offerings with sprigs of fresh rosemary. N01 notices. N01 thanks you, but the shrine does not crumble, and that, you think, is enough. The garden has become your memory. You remember years not by festivals or archons, but by which tree bore fruit, or which summer the water ran dry. There was the year the olive tree near the shed nearly died from frost, the year the goat choked on a fig stem, the year a woman in red robes came and wept silently at the altar for a full hour. You didn't speak to her, but the next week she returned and left a copper ring on the wall. It's still there, you touch it when the fig tree flowers, not for luck, just to remember. The boy is older now, taller, stronger. He speaks more, not much, but enough. He tells you once, while trimming the thyme, I think the god is happy here. You do not reply, but you smile and hand him the shears. There's a kind of peace in being forgotten. N01 taxes the garden. N01 drafts from the shrine. The wars pass far above your heads, like summer clouds that never quite turn to rain. Athens fights. Athens falls. Athens debates itself to death. But here, the figs still ripen. The olives still twist in the sun. The garden endures, because someone tends it, because someone remembered where the cracked clay drinks deepest, because someone, once long ago, decided that even a minor god deserves a little beauty behind his stones. Tonight, you light a small lamp, place it on the altar, not because you believe, but because the boy does. You sit together, silent, listening to the wind in the olives. The garden sleeps, the god watches or does not, and your hands, stained with soil and leaf, rest at last. Section 2. The tools you inherit. There is a rhythm to tools, not just how you use them but how they arrive, how they change hands, how they wear. The boy asks one day, how old is the spade? You hold it in your palm. The blade is worn flat. At the end, not sharp like a soldier's. I don't know, you say, but that's not quite true. You remember the man who used it before you, and the man before him, at least by name. The handle is darker where hands have gripped it for years. There's a nick where someone once cut too deep into olive roots. It does not belong to you. Not really. It belongs to the garden. When something breaks, you don't throw it away, you mend. There's a shed wall lined with copper wire, twine, and odd nails bent straight again. The rake lost a tooth last summer. You hammered in a new one from a bit of broken comb. The shears lost their hinge. You tied them shut, and now use them one-handed. The boy finds a small amphorae cracked in half and asks, "Should we toss it?" You shake your head. It becomes a funnel. Full olive oil runoff. Another piece becomes a scoop for compost. Even the shards are placed under the leeks to hold warmth. The gods may demand perfection, but the garden does not. The garden accepts broken things. You teach the boy to listen for rust. He laughs. Rust makes no sound, but it does. It changes the way the shears scrape. It bites into the rake when you pull it through damp earth. It smells like wet iron and ash. You show him how to oil the blades, wrap them in cloth, hang them away from the wall so they don't draw moisture. He nods, then forgets, then remembers. Learning is a slow bloom. There are records of a sort, old lines carved into olive wood, markings from the hands before yours. You keep them behind the shed door. Not scrolls, not ink, just lines. Each caretaker notches a tally for every year they served. There are 32 lines, some deep and straight, others shallow or crooked. You add one each autumn. This year the boy adds it. You say nothing, but you smile when he lines it true. The soil is thin in places. The garden was never rich, not like the valley fields or the land near the river. You teach the boy how to trick it. He layers goat dung and crushed olive pits. He buries fish bones when he can find them. He peels back the dry topsoil and tucks compost below. Like a gift. It is slow work, but the garden softens, responds. The leeks green faster. The figs swell. The god says nothing, but the time looms longer than ever before. There is a word for this kind of care. Epimeleia.it means tending, not with pride, not for reward, but because something must be tended. It is the kind of word the philosophers like to use in the city. They speak of it as virtue, but here it is simply what's done. You wake, you water, you mend, you gather. You do not wait for thanks. You just wait for rain. There's a chisel in the shed, burnt from age, but still strong. You don't remember who put it there, but the boy finds it one evening and says, "Can I carve something?" You nod. He finds a flat piece of stone broken from the path long ago. He doesn't carve a face or a name. He carves a rake, just the shape of it, and hangs the stone near the shrine. You say nothing, but later that night you add oil to the lamp. People begin to visit. Not many. A girl with a cut hand comes and sits near the rosemary. An old man who once served in the militia leaves a crust of bread beside the altar and whispers something you can't hear. The woman in red robes returns. She brings a jug of wine and pours it slowly, watching the stream fall onto the stones. No one stays long. They leave quietly. They do not speak to you. But the garden is never empty anymore, even in silence. It is seen. One morning, the priest returns, the same one, robes still white, sandals still spotless. But his eyes are heavy. He sees the boy, the tools, the carved rake on the stone. He says they're sending someone from the city. You pause. Why? The boundary stones are being redrawn. A larger shrine is being planned. You nod. He does not explain more. He doesn't need to. You've seen the signs already, strangers marking trees, measuring paces with ropes. The city creeps outward, always hungry. Even the gods are not safe from its reach. You do not tell the boy, not yet. Instead, you walk the garden's edge. You run your hand along the olive trunks. You kneel and press a finger into the soil still warm from the sun. You listen, not for the god, for the garden.it hums, in its own way, a low thrum of roots and worms and hidden beetles.it does not care for cities or borders or architects.it only asks for hands. The next day, the boy finds a broken handle near the compost. He tries to carve it into a spoon. Fails, laughs, tries again. This time, it works. It's lopsided, ugly, perfect. You use it to stir lentils that night. The boy says, maybe we can plant more leeks next year. You nod, but say nothing. Next year is a long way off. A stranger comes. She wears a city tunic and carries a roll of parchment. She walks the garden once, says, charming. She draws lines on her paper, marks the shrine, touches the altar with 2 fingers, then wipes them clean on her hem. She leaves without speaking to either of you. Later, the boy asks, will they take it away? You do not answer. You mend the fence. You trim the rosemary. You place your hands on the cracked spade and feel the weight of years in the wood. That night, the boy says, if they build a new shrine, maybe they'll let us keep the garden. You do not want to tell him that shrines get walls, and gardens get paved, and tools get melted. But you do not say this. Instead, you hand him the shears and say, trim the time. The stems are old. He nods and does it well. There is a wordless pact between hands and earth. And a decree can dissolve it. Even when the god is moved, even when the stones are lifted, even when your shed becomes rubble and your compost pile is carted away, the soil will still need tending. Somewhere, somehow, and hands quiet, careful hands will still remember how. The boy finds a stone near the edge of the garden, not shaped by tools, just smoothed by time. He carves one more symbol into it, a spade and a leaf. He places it where the fig tree splits at the base. He says, if the garden goes, maybe something will stay. You rest your palm against the fig's bark. It is warm, alive even, if forgotten. The shed door creaks when you close it that night. You lock it. Place the key beneath the stone with the spade carved on it. You do not know if the city will come tomorrow or in 10 years. But the garden is ready. It has always been ready. As long as someone remembers how to hold a rake. Section 3. The quiet that remains. It starts with silence. Not the usual hush of dawn, but a silence with weight, the kind that settles in corners. The birds do not sing that morning. The wind does not rustle the fig leaves. Even the olive branches stay still. You know before you open your eyes. They've come. You do not rush. You dress with the same slowness as always, layering tunic over your shoulder, wrapping the cord twice, tying it left-handed, as you've done every day since the old tendon injury. The boy is already awake. He stands barefoot near the compost heap, holding the rake, just holding it. As if unsure what to do. You say, "They will not understand the garden." He nods, then says, "We don't need them to." And you smile, because it is true. They arrive in procession. Architects first. Their measuring rods glint. Then workers, roped together, carrying chisels and red chalk. And last, the new priest. You don't know her. She is younger than you expected. Her robe is fresh, but her hands are rough, maybe once a potter's apprentice. She does not bow to the old altar. Instead, she places a blank tablet at its base. A new beginning. They are polite. One man asks if you'll help show where the water lines run. Another wonders aloud if the fig tree can be moved. You nod once. Say little. The fig tree will not move. It will die. If they try, you tell them this. They record it in charcoal. Then draw a dotted line around it. It does not matter. The dotted line will vanish beneath stone. The boy wants to fight. You see it in how he watches the worker's eyes narrowed, fists clenched. But you place a hand on his shoulder. Tools, you say, not fists. So he digs, not in protest but in care. He loosens soil around the thyme, lifts it gently, pot by pot, root by root. You both move what you can. A small army of plants, carried in baskets to a slope just beyond the new shrine's shadow. You do not ask permission. You do not need it. For 3 days, they build. The old altar is carefully lifted. The stones catalogued, numbered, reassembled on a square platform with 4 marble steps. The garden shrinks. The shed becomes scaffold. The fig tree's roots are cut, just a few, but you hear it in the leaves, a kind of grief. You water it anyway. You do not abandon the living. On the 5th day, the city sends a scribe. He carries a scroll with many seals. He reads aloud, "By decree of the Council of Eleusis, and with the blessing of the greater shrine of Demeter, this site shall be rededicated to new order." His voice is smooth, practiced. When he finishes, the new priest makes a mark in wax, then turns to you. Your work was appreciated. The records will note your name. You nod, but inside, you think. The soil does not keep records. The rake remembers more than the scroll. That evening, the boy sits on the slope above the new shrine. The plants are laid out in rough rows: lavender, thyme, rosemary, mint. Not yet a garden. Not quite. He asks, "Will they forget?" You say, "Of course." Then add, "But we won't." And that is enough. For now, winter comes early. The wind shift. The garden would needed mending, the fence along the east especially, but the fence is gone now. Only the rake remains, hanging on a hook that no longer has a wall. The boy begins building a small stone ring around the hearths. Not perfect, but it holds shape. He layers ash and crushed shells into the soil. He remembers the fig tree, against all odds, survives the frost. Its bark splits in places, but the roots still cling. One morning in late Poseidon, you see a green shoot near the base. It is no miracle. It is memory, written in bark and sap. The new shrine is grand. Visitors arrive more often. They light lamps, chant hymns, pour wine from painted jugs. They speak in rehearsed phrases. You don't mind. Some even wander to the slope. One woman kneels beside the thyme and says, "This smells like my mother's hands." You say nothing, but you offer her a sprig. She cries, then leaves. A year passes. Then another. The priest grows older. Not much, but enough. She comes to the slope more often. Once she brings a broken trowel. You mend it. She says thank you. That is all. But she returns. The boy is taller. Now, he starts a compost pile. He hangs new tools on olive wood pegs. He begins marking years on a flat stone by the fig tree. Not notches but symbols. A rake, a leaf, a hand. He calls it the quiet record. It is more permanent than any scroll. Some days, people ask if this is still a sacred place. You say, it's a garden. They ask, for which god? You shrug and point to the soil. That is enough. The plants grow. The bees return. A lizard makes its home beneath the mint. Whatever god remains here is small and kind. There's a girl now. She follows the boy. Watches how he mends the netting for the peas, how he lays crushed eggshells for the snails. He doesn't notice, but you do. You smile. She brings him a clay jar she made herself. He fills it with water and places it near the thyme. Nothing is said, but something is passed on. As always. Your handshake. Now, you cannot lift the spade as you once did. But the boy, now nearly a man, doesn't need reminders. He sharpens the shears before the first rains. He oils the rake handles before storage. He checks the fig roots for signs of rot. One day, you find him adding a new line to the garden's edge. A curve of stones. You say, "What's that?" He says, "A path for someone who comes after." And you know, in that moment he understands. There is no ceremony when you stop tending. You do not make a speech. You do not mark the day. You simply do a little less, and then a little less again. The boy, your boy, fills the space without asking, without fear. You sit beneath the fig tree and let the garden go on without you. It does not slow. It does not grieve. It simply grows. The shrine bell rings faintly in the distance. Someone sings a hymn you do not know. But the garden is louder now, rich with bees, with rustling mint, with soft laughter from the slope. The god, whoever they are, is surely pleased, not by the stone altar, not by the incense, but by the thyme blooming in the cold. You rest, you sleep, and the rake, still hanging on the olive peg, gathers a little dust, but it is ready, always ready, for the next hand, for the next season, for the next silence to break with green. Story 6. The Millstone and the Moon. Section 1. The dust that settles between stones. You wake to the smell of flour. Not the soft, yeasty warmth of baked bread, no. This is dry and raw, a smell that clings to everything. It seeps into the walls, the clothes, the folds of the old wool blanket curled at your feet. Even your breath tastes faintly of it. Somewhere nearby, a donkey stamps its foot. Once, twice, the sound carries through the thin plaster walls like a warning bell. You sit up. It's cold, though not the sort of cold that makes you shiver. but the stubborn chill of stone, of a room that never fully warms. Around you, the signs of life are slow and practical. A cracked amphora with a bundle of wheat stalks leaned against it. A single bronze cup on a wooden shelf bowed in the middle. A pile of cloth, sacks patched too many times to count. Dust from the grinding stones has settled into every crease of the room, every thread of your tunic. This is not your bed, and yet your body remembers it. Your knees ache when they hit the packed earth floor. Your fingers know the worn wooden peg where you hang your belt. And your ears twitch just a little when you hear the first creak of the lull water wheel. He's already awake. You step out onto the mill's balcony, which overlooks the dry stone trench that once held the spring. Now, it carries nothing. Just a few weeds, a rabbit track, and a memory of what used to flow through it. The miller, he is called Damon, or perhaps just old Damon, now stands beside the upper wheel, running his hand along the wooden axle like it's a calf he's raised. He doesn't look up when you approach. He doesn't need to. The east wind's late, he says. You nod. That seems true. It always came through the pass before dawn, stirring up the chaff and lifting it off the drying racks. Without it, the hulls cling to the grain like stubborn secrets. More work, longer hours, more hands blistered on the turning cranks. Still, Damon is not rushing. He takes his time inspecting the great millstone, tapping the edge with a long iron hook. Tock, tock. The same way a priest taps the marble of the temple floor, listening for cracks. You've lived here long enough to know this morning will be no different than yesterday. And yet, it feels like something is slowly giving way. Not breaking, but softening. Fading. You know the way the day will go. You'll shovel yesterday's meal from the bin. You'll climb the rickety ladder to unstick the hopper's catch. You'll pour barley by the handful. Not too fast, never. Too fast or the stone will jam and groan like a trapped ox. And through it all, Damon will mutter under his breath. Not curses, he's too old and too patient for those but questions. How many turns since last wetting? Did the boy from Thesby ever bring his dirt-in coin? Did we ever fix that crack in the eastern chute? You won't always answer. You've learned not every question needs one. The light creeps slowly across the mill's interior, a dull gold brushing against dusty beams. A spoon clinks inside the clay bowl Damon holds as you sit on the bench. It's lentils again, with a pinch of wild garlic. Enough to warm the belly, but little more. He finally speaks again, between mouthfuls. Tell me what you know about the moon. You blink, caught off guard. The question feels too large for the silence it breaks. It tells the tides, you say. He nods, chewing. It tells the women their seasons, you add. He nods again. It lets us know when to plant. You finish. He smirks not unkindly. Just enough to say you've said what's expected, but not what's needed. He leans in slightly, whispering like you're at a temple gate. It tells me when to stop. You frown. When to stop milling. Damon shrugs. When to stop everything. He leans back again, sipping what's left of his broth. Later, as the stone turns and the mill groans it slow him, you think about that. The moon and stopping. You glance up at the sliver of it still hanging in the pale morning sky. It's barely there, just a curved eyelash above the horizon, fading like old Damon himself. You shovel another load of grain into the hopper-dotty. Midday, a woman arrives from the Lauer village. Her name is Timo. You remember her now, she came 2 winters ago. Her fingers raw from washing cloth in the icy stream. She brings barley this time, not to grind it, but to trade it for something you no longer keep. You're out of lentils? She asks, clearly frustrated. You glance toward Damon. He doesn't answer. He just inspects the grooves on the upper stone again, scratching at them with a broken tile. Last batch went to the priestess, you say gently. Timo grunts. I'll remember that, she mutters, but she leaves the barley anyway. Store it in the west bin, Damon says, only after she's gone. And mark it with the knot string, 3rd peg. You do as you're told. You count the loops. You hang the weight. You knot the string. It's an old system, older than either of you, and Damon refuses to write things down. Paper burns, he says, and charcoal fades, but the hand remembers. You run your fingers over the pegs before stepping away. You wonder how long the hand remembers. That night, you can't sleep. You hear the soft turn of the wheel still echoing in your ears, the creak of the wood, the slow drag of stone across stone. The moon is higher now, half full and bright enough to throw shadows through the shutter slats. You step outside. Damon is already there, sitting beside the dry channel, his knees pulled up, his back against a cracked pillar stone. He points to the moon. See that? He says, there's your answer. You follow his gaze, but see only a pale curve, a mark in the sky. When it's full, I'll shut the meal for good, he says. You turn to look at him, but the barley will still need grinding. He nods, and the debt's still tracked. He nods again. You sit beside him, and neither of you speak for a long time. The wheel creaks behind you in its rhythm. The moon climbs, and somewhere in the fields, a lone owl calls once, then goes silent again. Unresolved thought section ending. And so you sit beside the man who taught you the value of dust, listening to the weight of silence and stone, wondering what happens when the moon becomes full and the mill stops turning. Section 2. Where the wheel hesitates, wheel is slowing, not quickly, not all at once, but it's slowing in the way winter approaches in Greece, not with a sudden storm, but with small changes that are easy to ignore. A draft where none was before, a stiffness in your fingers that lingers past dawn, the feel of stone that stays cold even in full sun. The mill still turns, but it complains more loudly. Now it groans when you load the hopper. It shudders when the grain flows too fast. And sometimes, in the early morning, when the dew has yet to lift from the eaves, you hear a soft pop in the axle beam like a knuckle being cracked by time. Damon notices. Of course he does, but he says nothing. Instead, he's taken to watching. Not the millstones, not the pulley ropes or the gear teeth. He watches you. When you tie the cord just a little too tight, when your elbow bumps the storage jar, when you hesitate before turning the winch, he's testing something, not your strength, not your loyalty. He's testing your memory. You think of his phrase often now. The hand remembers. You're beginning to see what he meant. Writing down weights or telling measures in ink, those can be misplaced, forgotten, ruined by a spilled cup or a mouse's tooth. But when you tie the twine in a certain way, your fingers remember the shape of the knot. When you fill the stone bin with 2 sacks and a 3rd scoop, your shoulder remembers the weight of just enough. And now, your feet know where there. Floorboards creak. Your wrist knows the pressure it takes to stop the gear with a single firm touch. You even know which lever to push when the upper chute clogs, without having to look. Still, Damon keeps watching. That afternoon, he calls you to the upper storeroom. It's not a place you go often. The steps creak sharply, old wood, uneven rises. When you arrive, the air smells different. Not of flour, of oil, old olive oil, gone sharp from storage. There are bundles of tools hanging from wooden nails, most rusted, some so worn you can't tell what they were used for. He points to a heap of cloth in the corner. You pull it aside. It's a harness. A harness meant for shoulders, not oxen. Thick-strapped and padded with old felt, the kind used by men who carried heavy things across long distances. You look at him. You'll need it, he says. For what? Stone. He turns and walks away. 3 days later, you find out what he meant. The lower stone has cracked, not broken in half, not shattered, but cracked a thin, deep fault like a line drawn in ink across the granite face. At first, you think it's a surface scrape. Then you hear the sound it makes when the grain pushes down hard. A strange, uneven whine, like the stone itself is trying to speak but can't. Damon doesn't panic. Instead, he hauls out a leather scroll from under the floorboards, one of the few things he keeps written. It's a diagram, a map, not of roads, not of rivers, of weights, granite, basalt, sandstone, and the weight of each in minor and talents, by size and width. You realize what you're looking at. The backup stones, somewhere, perhaps buried under the field stones near the riverbed, or in the sunken cave behind the olive grove. There is another pair of stones spare, ancient and long untouched. You are to fetch one. He doesn't come with you. You go alone, carrying the shoulder harness and a chipped pickaxe. The path to the grove is overgrown, and the hollow where the storage pit lies is dark with shade. You feel foolish, scraping the dirt like a dog. But after 2 hours of digging, your hand strikes something cold. Not metal, stone, rounded on the edge. You dig further, dragging loose the coiled roots of a fig tree, and uncover the millstone. It takes until dusk to lift it out. You don't carry it far, not that night. You roll it to the edge of the grove and leave it there beneath a low tree, nestled like a buried moon. Damon says nothing when you return. He nods. That's all. But the next morning, he rises earlier than you. The harness is waiting by the door. The cart is packed with straw, and for the first time in many weeks, he hums while he works. A hymn to Hermes, you think, or maybe to the wheel itself. The replacement takes 2 days. The old stone is gently lifted. its cracked surface brushed and cleaned, then laid against the wall like a retired tool. You can't help but run your hand across the line that ended its labor. It still smells of barley. The new stone fits well. It's heavier, a little uneven, and Damon has to shave one side with a chisel so it turns smoothly. But once the wheel moves again, there's a clean rhythm in the grinding, a tone you hadn't realized had gone missing. That night, you eat a better meal, flat bread with a little fig paste and boiled greens. Damon opens a small jar of preserved olives. He shares them without a word, but after the meal, he sits with his back to the hearth and begins to speak. I carved that stone when I was 30, he says. I took the chisel from my brother's forge. Didn't ask, just took it. He never said anything. You sit across from him, still chewing. I thought I'd use it once, maybe twice, but it stayed with me for 30 years. He stares into the fire. Sometimes the things we keep, they outlast the reasons we kept them. You wonder if he's talking about the stone, or the mill, or perhaps himself. 2 days later, the woman from the village Timo returns. This time, she doesn't ask about lentils. She comes with her son. The boy is perhaps 8, maybe 10. Barefoot, holding a clay jug of grain too large for his arms. Timo stands by the doorway while Damon crouches to greet the boy. You know how to tell when the grain's ground fine enough? Damon asks him. The boy shakes his head. Damon scoops a pinch from the bin, rubs it between his fingers, then lets the dust fall into the boy's hand. When it feels like ash, but smells like bread, he says. The boy blinks. Try it, Damon says, nodding toward the mill. You watch as the boy steps onto the platform, barely tall enough to see into the hopper. Damon helps him tip the jug, guiding his hands. It takes longer than it should. The grain spills. The rhythm is off, but Damon doesn't correct him. He only watches. You realize you're no longer being watched. That night, Damon doesn't join you for supper. You find him by the old stone again, the cracked one. He's seated beside it, running a finger slowly along the fault line, the way he once traced the grooves of the new stone. Every wheel stops, he murmurs. You sit beside him. But the dust stays, he adds. It settles, fills the cracks, holds the shape of everything we've ever ground. You don't speak. He leans back, staring up through the gaps in the roof at the sky. The moon is nearly full now. Section 3. The last turn of the wheel. There's a feeling that comes with old tools. Not just wear, not just age. It's something quieter, something like memory. The wooden scoop, worn smooth where fingers have rubbed it for decades. The ladder that creaks in the same place each time, not because it's broken, but because it has learned how to bend. The oil lamp with the faint burn mark along its lip, from a night long forgotten when someone, perhaps Damon, held it too close to the wall. These things stay. They remain when people go. And this morning, something has changed in the way Damon moves. He still rises early, still washes his hands at the stone basin, still tightens the belt on his tunic with slow, careful tugs. But he doesn't go to the hopper. He sits near the ledger instead, not writing in it, just holding the charcoal stick, turning it between his fingers, watching the morning light move across the page without writing a single mark. You take your place at the mill without a word. The wheel is turning smoothly now, almost too smoothly. The new stone has settled into its groove, and the rhythm is nearly perfect. It no longer requires careful listening. It no longer feels like something to worry about, which is perhaps why Damon has stopped listening. The boy timos. Sun comes again in the afternoon, this time without his mother. He carries only a half sack of spelt and a piece of flat bread wrapped in a cloth. You nod at him and guide him to the hopper, watching how he empties the sack with better control than last week. He even checks the grain chute before pulling the lever like you once did, like Damon did before that. There's a quiet efficiency in him already. No wasted motion. No uncertainty. You don't say much. He doesn't expect you to. But when the sack is empty and the grinding done, he waits. You glance over. Damon hasn't moved. The boy notices. Is he sick? He asks softly. You shake your head, just thinking. Later that evening, Damon leaves the mill house. Not for the village, not for the bathhouse. He walks toward the stream behind the olive grove, the same one where the old stone was buried. You follow at a distance, not to disturb him, but because you feel somehow it's important. He stops by a flat patch of earth. The soil is soft here, churned by the rains and the roots of fig trees. There, he begins to dig. No tools, just his hands. He doesn't go deep, just enough to bury something small. When he stands again, you glimpse what it was, the charcoal stick. From the ledger. No words written, no list, just the tool itself, buried in earth, a kind of silence made permanent. That night, he speaks again. My father wasn't a miller, he says. You blink. You assumed he had been. He fished. But when he died, there was no one to keep the stones turning. The village needed flour. So I learned. You're seated by the hearth, drinking weak wine, the fire flickering low. Half my life, Damon says, I thought I'd return to the water. I never did. He looks at his hands. But I learned to love the sound of the stone. You can sleep to it. You can pray to it. A pause. Or you can leave it. He looks up at you. Do you know what happens when a mill stops? You wait for the answer. Nothing, he says. That's the part no one believes. No thunder, no curse, just quiet. 2 weeks pass. The boy becomes more confident. He stays longer each day. Once, you catch him rearranging the grain sacks by weight, something Damon used to do. Damon, meanwhile, begins to walk farther each morning. Not to work, just to walk. His hands no longer lift grain. His sleeves are less dusty. He seems smaller now, not just in posture, but in presence, like a shadow stretching toward sunset. And one morning, he is gone. Not vanished, just absent. You find a simple note scratched onto the back of a wooden scoop. The wheel knows your name now. That's all. And oh, goodbye. No instructions, No blessings, just that. You return to the mill alone. For a while, the work is heavier. You rise earlier. You check every tooth and lever yourself. You keep your ear to the stone longer than necessary, afraid you'll miss the wrong sound. But then you realize you're not alone. Timo's boy is waiting at the doorway each morning. Sometimes he brings others. A girl from the Western Hill who knows how to carry wet sacks on her head. An older man from the village who sharpens tools. A neighbor who once sold you onions and now offers you firewood in trade. The mill has become part of them now and part of you. Years pass. The roof is patched again. The pulley rope is replaced. The seine will turn slower now, but still steady. And one evening, as the moon rises high and whole above the eaves, you find yourself sitting by the old stone, the cracked one, tracing your hand along its weathered face. You imagine Damon sitting there once, whispering to the dust. You imagine the boy now grown doing the same someday. You wonder how many hands the stone has known, how many names the wheel will remember.